So these are quotes directly from the Urantia book that describe the Garden of Eden. It says, they lived on a long, narrow peninsula, almost an island, projecting westward from the eastern shores of the Mediterranean Sea. This Mediterranean peninsula had encircling mountains. The architectural plans for Eden provided homes and abundant land for 1 million human beings. About 33,000 years ago, the eastern floor of the Mediterranean Sea sank, carrying down beneath the waters the whole of the Edenic Peninsula. Concomitant with this vast submergence, the coastline of the eastern Mediterranean was greatly elevated. The coastline of this landmass was considerably elevated, and the neck connecting with the mainland was only 27 miles wide at the narrowest point. The great river that watered the garden came down from the higher lands of the peninsula and flowed east through the peninsular neck to the mainland, and thence across the lowlands of Mesopotamia to the sea beyond. So I picked this topic, one, because it's got a lot of pictures, and pictures are worth 1,000 words in this case. But also, I think it, interrelates with the other things you've been studying in this course. So, from the Life Pictorial Atlas of the World 1961, we read, it was not until 1957, 1958, the International Geophysical Year, that scientists of many nations worked together as a tremendous team to compile a comprehensive portrait of the ocean's floor. The first collaboration I want to share with you is this. We're going to be looking at this area right here as the long, narrow peninsula surrounded by mountains. And one of the things I just read to you was it said that there was abundant land there for 1 million inhabitants. But one of the curious things is, right next door to this, we've got the island of Cyprus, which, as you can see, is roughly the same size. It's a little bigger, but it also has 6,000-foot mountains sticking up right in the middle of it that are not as inhabitable as the other lower-lying areas. Curiously enough, the 2005 census of Cyprus put the inhabitants of that island at just under 1 million people. So when the Urantia book says that there's abundant land for 1 million inhabitants, curiously enough, today right next door we've got the island of Cyprus for comparison. Now here we get into some of the close-ups. So obviously this is our long, narrow peninsula surrounded by mountains, narrowing as it comes to the shore. These double arrows here represent the 27 miles that it's, specific. Arrows to the shore, the narrowest point is 27 miles. We're going to come back to this in just a moment. Here's a map of the plate tectonics in that area. As we can see from these gray arrows circling clockwise, what that indicates is that this is a convergence of 3 tectonic plates that is creating a cross-current of forces. Unlike the normal subduction force of just simply one plate going under the other and pushing, here in this area we've got quite a cross-current separating the landmass from the island of Cyprus. And notice here where it comes to the shore is just right above that 27-mile area. So now when we come back to this slide, and we notice that this is pinched together a little bit less than the 27 miles, we're also able to notice that the shoreline is particularly rough throughout the 27-mile range as compared to further south. And we can also see that the topography here is not so well defined as it is in other areas. And naturally it just makes sense that if this did descend into the Mediterranean Ocean 33,000 years ago due to the activity of these tectonic plates and such, the Urantia book also says it has to do with the Sicilian land bridge opening up and a lot of flooding occurring as well. But that it would be natural to have some deformation, and that's exactly what we see, is that on the more northern side, imagine that line coming through about here, right? We've got more deformation of the landscape compared to here. The last correlation we're going to look at has to do with what the Urantia book said about the waters flowing off the peninsula and across the mainland to the sea beyond. That is, the waters didn't flow into the Mediterranean Sea because there were encircling mountains, right? Well, here's our 27-mile distance again. This line here at the break of the mountains is right here. And when we look at this slide, to get a broader view of it, what we can see, even though it's harder to see where the peninsula is, of course it's right here. Here's our 27 miles, and sure enough, at exactly the right point, and running perfectly parallel to the peninsula itself, is a break in the mountains that are said to have risen at the same time that the peninsula sank. So, this is one of the reasons it's a Class A report. We've got multiple correlations of fact. We've got various aspects of science having had to catch up to it, both plate tectonics as well as underwater mapping of the ocean floor. And I think it rocks.